Hi everyone, welcome back. Jolene here from Bookworm Adventure Girl. If you are watching for the first time, thanks for checking out my channel. Many of you already know that I want to read all the books, and there's no way that it will ever happen, but it doesn't stop me from at least trying. And there are so many books being published in April. I think my original list is probably like 45 books long for April. So today I'm going to share the books I am most excited to read that are coming out in April 2021. And I think I've narrowed it down to about 15 books. As usual, the publishing dates I have for these books are the Canadian or US publishing dates. They were accurate at the time that I recorded this video, but they are subject to change. So the best thing is to always check with the publisher if you want to make sure. I have noticed that a number of dates have been changing in the upcoming months, but usually it's only by a week, maybe a couple of weeks or so. So after I share these 15 books, I am also going to share a little bit about Kwibuka Reads, which I will be doing from April until July. So at the end of the video, I will explain more about what Kwibuka means and what that's all about. I am quickly going to go through these books, and hopefully there will be at least something on this list that sparks your interest. The first one may be one that has a publication date change. The publishers still say April 1st, so I'm going to include it here. The novel is The Family Way by Christopher DiRaddo. This is Canadian fiction, and it is about Paul and his friends Wendy and Eve. Wendy and Eve ask Paul to help them get pregnant. And there's nothing about the process that feels natural to him, but Paul, being a gay man, considers his options of making a family. The book takes us through 18 months in which Paul's past and present are revealed, from his strained relationship with his father, his overprotective relationship with his partner, Michael, and the many friends around him who he considers to be family. The next books are all scheduled to be published on April 6th. Cynthia Sweeney is the author of The Nest, which I really enjoyed, and I'm looking forward to her most recent novel called Good Company. The main character is Flora Mancini. She's happily married, and then one day she finds her husband's wedding ring, the one that he claimed he lost one summer when their daughter Ruby was 5. So now Flora's life is kind of turned upside down, and she doesn't know what to believe about her marriage and her best friend Margot. Somehow Margot is all caught up in this drama too. So Flora has to find out what happened that summer, many, many years ago, and whether all of her relationships have been based on lies. The third installment of the You series by Carline Kepnes is coming out. The thriller You Love Me continues the story of Joe, who has decided to live a more simple life on an island in the Pacific Northwest. This time he works in a local library, and that's when it happens. Joe meets librarian Mary Kay DeMarco. Joe decides to approach this relationship differently. He won't meddle. Yes, I think he will. He won't obsess. My guess is he will. Joe decides to win Mary the old-fashioned way by providing a shoulder to cry on, a helping hand. He thinks that over time they'll both heal their wounds and begin their happily ever after lives together. There's just one thing. Mary Kay already has a life. She's a mother, she's a friend, and she's a very busy woman. But Joe feels ready, and hopefully with his encouragement and undying support, Mary Kay will do the right thing and make room for him. So you've heard me talk about Joe before and how I love to hate him and also can't help but like him just a little bit, even though he does horrible things. If you've read the other two books in the series, then you know that Joe just can't help himself. And Mary Kay, oh boy, girl, better watch out. The next book is by an author that has been on my radar for a while. Canadian author Uzma Jalaluddin, and I hope I'm saying the name correctly. The debut novel was Aisha at Last, and that was a diverse retelling of Pride and Prejudice, and I'm actually currently reading Pride and Prejudice. So I want to read her first novel soon, and then hopefully read her new novel, which is Hana Carries On. This is a rom-com set in 2 competing halal restaurants. Hana is a part-time waitress at the Three Sisters Biryani Poutine in a close-knit neighborhood. And what Hana really wants to do with her life is tell stories on the radio. She's finding ways to outshine her fellow intern at the city radio station, and she may have a chance at landing a job. But for now, Hana pours her thoughts and dreams into a podcast where she forms a lively relationship with one of her listeners. Then a new competing restaurant, a more upscale halal place, is about to open up, threatening Three Sisters. When her aunt and teenage cousin arrive from India for a surprise visit, they draw Hana into a long-buried family secret. Plus, Hana's attraction for the young owner of the rival restaurant isn't really happening and making things easier either. So as things unravel, Hana must learn to use her voice, draw on the strength of her community, and she has to decide what her future should be like. The next book is a thriller that has been getting some rave reviews. The Good Sister is by Australian author Sally Hepworth. Rose and Fern are twin sisters. They are very different, but they are also very devoted to one another. Their mother is a psychopath, and Rose has protected Fern from her their entire lives. A long time ago, Fern did something really, really bad, and Rose has never told anyone. Now, Rose wants to have a baby, and Fern decides to help her achieve this goal. But Fern doesn't like the choices she makes, and Fern is becoming aware of all of the secrets Rose has been keeping. Coming out on April 13th is another Canadian fiction novel, A Brief View from the Coastal Suite, which is by Karen Hofmann. And this is actually a sequel to her novel, What Is Going to Happen Next? And I want to read both of these. A Brief View from the Coastal Suite is set in Vancouver in 2008. It continues the stories of the Lund siblings, Cleo, Mandalay, Cliff, and Ben. They were separated as children by social services, and in this novel we see how each of their lives have taken shape and how their values and priorities differ. On April 15th is a debut novel from Isobel Wohl called Cold New Climate. This is also the first publication from a brand new UK press called Weatherglass Books. And this story is about Lydia, who goes to Greece to take a break from her New York life. When she returns, her much older partner Tom has fallen in love with someone else. When Lydia reconnects with Tom's son Caleb, relationships between the 3 characters get even more complicated, as I'm sure you can imagine. I have 3 books to talk about that are coming out on April 20th. The first is a historical fiction novel, The Social Graces by Renee Rosen. This story is based on true events that take place over 3 decades. Alva Vanderbilt and Carline Astor were 2 women of New York's elite society, and this book is all about what they will do to keep the notoriety, money, and power, and I'm guessing that they get into quite a bit of mischief. Second is the newest novel from Chris Bohjalian. Hour of the Witch is also historical fiction / thriller. The story takes place in 1662 in Boston. Mary Deerfield is in her early 20s and she is in a horrible marriage. Her husband is incredibly cruel and he's also very powerful. Mary decides that she must divorce him, but this isn't very easy since it is 1662. She's a woman. and every eye is upon her, and there are suspicions about her already. Things start happening to cause more eyebrows to raise, like a boy Mary treated dies, and a servant girl runs screaming from their home. So Mary must find a way to escape her husband and the witch hunts. Third is Hot Stew by English author Fiona Mozley. This story takes place in a brothel in London, England, where Precious and Tabitha live and work. Agatha is the wealthy owner of the building, and she wants to kick the women out because she wants to build luxury flats and expensive restaurants. And she's not really expecting the women to fight back, but they do. And this is a book about class, gentrification, ownership, and inheritance. The last books are all being published on April 27th. First is an Indigenous book called Carrying the Burden of Peace by Sam McKegney. This book is about celebrating Indigenous masculinity, and the book explores Indigenous literary art for understandings of masculinity that basically exceeds the impoverished inheritance of colonialism. Next is Swimming to Freedom, My Escape from China and the Cultural Revolution, and it is by Kent Wong. This is a memoir about how Kent grew up in China during the Great Leap Forward. There was poverty, political persecution, and cultural revolution. Eventually, Kent joins an underground dissident group, and he risks his life in hopes of reaching freedom by swimming across miles of water to Hong Kong. And this sounds like quite a life and quite a story. Next up is another memoir called Buses Are A-Comin', Memoir of a Freedom Rider by Charles Person and Richard Rooker. Charles Person was 18 and the youngest of the original Freedom Riders, who were key figures in the civil rights movement in the U.S. Charles was he was on one of the buses that left Washington and D.C. headed for New Orleans in 1961, and the bus that Charles was on was mobbed, and the riders were nearly beaten to death. And I know about the Freedom Riders, but I have yet to really read a lot about them, so I think that this will be a good place to start, and I also think it's still an important message for our world today. There is another Canadian fiction in the mix with Wee Jane by Aimee Wohl. This is also a debut novel. The protagonist is I don't know if it's Martha or Marta, and she is in this intense relationship with an older woman. Both of them are from Newfoundland, and they return home, and Martha learns about an underground movement called Jane, which is the work of abortion services performed by women. Martha decides to learn how to continue on this legacy, and in reality, with a small town and rural life, it becomes clear that this won't be so easy. This book is about home, female relationships, and the need for connections. And finally, the next author is an author for me. Jhumpa Lahiri is a Bengali-American author, and her newest fiction novel is called Whereabouts. It is the first novel that she has written in Italian and has then translated it into English. This is a fairly short book. Maybe some people might even call it a novella, about a woman who is a university professor. I don't think she's ever named in the book. She's unmarried with no children and seems very content with her life. The book follows her for a year, and as we learn about her life, and her thoughts, and it seems that Lahiri is really focusing on themes in this book. What I am looking forward to the most is Lahiri's writing. It is always beautiful. So these are some of the new books coming out in April that I'm really interested in. Hopefully there was enough diversity in the list that a couple of them might resonate with you. Next, I want to take a minute to introduce you to Kwibuka Reads. I will be doing Kwibuka Reads from April 1st to July 1st. And Kwibuka is the word people in Rwanda use for remember. particularly when referring to the Rwandan genocide that took place over 100 days in 1994, killing over 800,000 people. I have mentioned Rwanda a few times already, and some of you are already aware of my love for Rwanda and its people. So beginning in April, I will be reading at least 1 to 2 books a month, focusing on Rwanda as a way to remember those who survived the genocide and those who were killed. To celebrate and remember, I will be doing one video in April, May, June, and July to share what I am reading for Kwibuka Reads, and I hope to also share some information and maybe some of my photos from my time in Rwanda in 2014 when I was there for the 20th anniversary. I will leave a list of all of the books I've mentioned in this video in the description box below. I will also leave a link to a quick video of Rwandans sharing what Kwibuka means to them. They can definitely say it so much better than I can. Please let me know if you are interested in any of these books that I talked about, or let me know what your most anticipated books are that will be published in April. You can also let me know if there is anything in particular that you would like to know about Rwanda or about the genocide, and I will do my best to make sure that I cover it in the next few months. I look forward to chatting with you in the comments. Thanks again for watching. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and don't forget to make every day an adventure.